2, 1. June Opal.
Hello.
What's
hello.
up?
Gosh, a year later and we're back, baby.
Yeah, I was doing my scheduling, and I have a horrible habit of I'll schedule in blocks and then completely forget about it, and then I'll look at myself like, fuck, I have nobody scheduled for like next week. Oh shit, I need to start scheduling again.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh fuck, you know what? Me and June haven't done this in like a year.
Yeah.
It's been a bit long.
No, I'm glad that we're doing it.
It's cool to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you as well.
And I was going to say this beforehand, but it's interesting now. I appreciate you coming and doing this because after I put up a podcast right after the election saying that I voted for Trump and why, and some people don't text me back anymore.
That's fair.
Let's put it that way. Some people don't text me back. My follower counts dropped.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, yeah. So I was like, let's... Not that because you're a pretty fucking sound-minded individual.
I try to be.
I'd say.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I really enjoyed the last podcast we did.
I did as well.
And I was like, you know what? They'll probably come back on, but I wonder who's not going to come back on.
Yeah.
And there's a few people that they haven't refused. They've just left me on red.
Oh, goodness.
And I'm like, damn, and I thought you... And they're like... I'm not going to try to out one person, but like this, specifically one person I'm kind of disappointed in.
Yeah.
Because they're like a bigger name. I'm not going to say what they do because I don't want to single somebody out, but
That's
they're
fair.
a bigger name in town that I thought I was cool with, that I
Yeah.
thought we were like, yeah, you know, they came on for a long time.
Yeah.
It's a longer episode, let's put it that way. And nope.
Goodness.
So wild times we're living in, dude.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I feel like people had such an emotional reaction to everything, which is fair. There's a lot of emotions, and emotions are high right now, which
Yeah.
is like, I mean, it happens every election, you know. Like that joke that I have about my dad being so fuming after Obama. That's a real thing that happened. I remember I walked into the living room and he was like, "This is it. This is the end of the world. We're done. There's nothing left."
Yeah.
And you know, and so like 3 weeks later, he's like back to normal. And I feel like a lot of people will get to that point. And
Oh, they
you
will.
know,
They
I'm
will.
not too worried about it. But.
And I will say this, like, because for the longest time, I'm always like, I think the best way I've heard it put was by Rogan, where he said it a couple weeks ago on his podcast. He was like, I'm politically homeless. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I find myself as well.
Yeah.
But I was always kind of like politically in the middle, leading to the left on most things. But then over the last few years, I'm like, oh, fuck, the left has kind of gotten kind of crazy for me. And I've kind of felt more in the center. But I will say this. Fucking following because I was just like, so how old are you?
I'm 29. Yeah.
29. Okay,
yeah.
so we were like in middle school, entering because when Obama got elected the first time, that was 08.
Yeah, I was 08.
So I was in how old was I? Because I was 8. That's 11. How old are you when you're 11 years old? 6th grade.
Yeah, 6 or 12. Yeah.
Yeah. So
sixth or
I
seventh
was
grade.
in middle school, and I do remember seeing on the news like the horrible like race protests, and I will say like that. I feel like that's the last election where like race really played a big part of it. You know what I mean? Where it was just like fuck, like no, that's bad. Coming like in the response to somebody getting elected, it was like oh, fuck,
It was pretty wild.
That's horrible.
They really did not like him.
Yeah, but you know, I think like you said, I think in 3 weeks everyone will be going back to normal. And I think a big part of that's because of the corporate media is pretty much dead now. You know what I mean? I think if this election proved anything,
Oh yeah, I mean at this point they had no influence on this election. I think this time around.
well, if they
and I think
did, I think they hurt the Democratic Party.
the Democratic Party hurt themselves
Yes,
years and years ago,
Yes.
and like has consistently like. You know how I feel about it. At least Republicans will fucking lie to everybody and be like, "We care about you." At this point, Democrats are like, "You're poor." All right, sounds cool. Good for you, homie. Like, you know, and I'm like,
You're like, oh, you just had a major hurricane, 80 to Israel.
yeah,
Let's go.
send $50 billion to Israel right now.
Yeah, it's wild fucking times, man. But I will say this, because I mean, I voted for Trump. But what I will say is, even if Kamala won, no matter who would have won that election, we've got at least 4 solid more years of great material coming our way.
Yeah, it's gonna be a wild time. It's hard for me because like I'm not that political as a comedian, and so it's just like I don't mind hearing it when it's like they're good takes and there's something funny about it. But I feel like we'll get a lot of people that'll just say random things about it, and it's just like, okay, cool, you know. And it's like like we had a lot of like humor the last time he was elected, and even during like Biden, right? Like there's been so much comedy material that has just come out from him being old, right?
Right.
But it got to a point where I feel like that was the only thing we were talking about, which just only fueled whatever, you know, if it was anybody, you know, if you were in that position, you were, you know, your whole vibe would change because of how much attention you're getting on a consistent basis. And so I feel like it's not necessarily what we need to be doing. And hopefully we'll have a good balance this time around between like, you know, things that are actually happening and just politics. But it's a part of comedy too, right? Political comedy is a huge thing.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the amazing people over at Chop Chili Company. Guys, they are the original sponsor of this podcast, and I could not be happier to continue to be working with these guys. I get it. It's New Mexico. Everyone loves red, green, both. But this genuinely is my favorite brand of chili here in the state of New Mexico, and I love being able to partner up with these guys. They are absolutely phenomenal. Zane and the rest of the team at Chop Chili do an amazing job running that company, and they make an absolutely phenomenal product. And right now, they are running a very special promotional on their Instagram. Go check them out on Instagram. Go give them a follow. And as they post pictures with the hashtag Where's My Chili Challenge, if you can guess where in New Mexico that picture was taken, you can win not only free red or green chili, but also a free custom t-shirt directly from the company themselves. Again, go check them out on Instagram, give them a follow, check out their hashtag Where's My Chili Challenge. Win yourself some free chili, win yourself some free shirts. They are also available in Smith's, Albertsons, Sprouts, and a ton of other grocery stores in the state of New Mexico, as well as El Paso, and they are expanding out to West Texas. Again, thank you so much to Zane and the rest of his amazing team over at Chop Chili. Back to the episode. Well, and I think too, and obviously I'm biased because I enjoy politics and I enjoy comedy. Very biased. But the other side of that too is because even though they're about to be just dead and buried, the corporate media is not going to stop. You know what I mean? I mean, they're a multi-billion-dollar apparatus. They're not going away anywhere. But with the amount of rhetoric that, and just not just like the rhetoric coming out of them, but just people talking about it, people being angry about it. Because I mean, like you said, it'll probably die down in 3 weeks, but then it'll kick back up when the inauguration happens. Then it'll die back down. Then something's going to happen. It'll ebb and flow like it always does.
Yeah.
But I think with comedy, having that, I'd hate to use like terms that are like the Gen Z terms, but like matching that energy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like match that. Like keep with how high the tensions are or whatever, match it.
Yeah.
Show everyone how to laugh at it.
Yeah, I
like
agree.
And that's why I was so like, I mean, aside from the obvious why I was thankful, that's why I was so thankful I got Casadas the weekend after the election.
Yeah.
Because I was watching people like flood into the room and get their seats, start ordering their food, ordering their drinks, and you could kind of just feel it. You could kind of feel, and because that Casada, have you been to Casadas?
I haven't. No,
So-
it's a little too far for me just to kind of walk to.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
But it's it's general, especially like the earlier shows. They're like an older crowd.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So you could like feel them talking about it, and it was just there's like a weird tension in there. Whereas like someone's like I was telling the feature that I was working with, super nice guy. I was telling him when Caroline was on stage. And because I was like, someone's got to talk about it.
Yeah.
Someone has to, because how do you not address it?
At a certain point, yeah. I mean, if you can feel the crowd feeling and thinking about it, then you have a great chance to like alleviate some of that stress that whatever side you're on, that stress is still there. And so like, yeah, it's an important part of the job of a comedian is to recognize the room, call out that energy, and then make it funny.
And what I was scared of too, because it could go one of two ways. And thankfully, it went my way.
Yeah.
But for most of the shows, 3 of the shows I knocked it out of the park. The late show on Friday was meh. But I was like, fuck, if I walk out there and I do the political stuff, and they just don't want to hear it, the first 4 minutes of this is not going to be good.
Nope. Yeah. I feel that.
So I just opened with it. I just got it out of the way, opened with it, and thankfully 75% of them loved it. But
good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience. But anyway, how the fuck have you been, dude? I've been seeing you doing like shows all the time.
Yeah.
Like you are like, I guess the term for it is like our class, like the comedy class. out of our class, you're probably my favorite person to watch right now.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Because you're consistently. This isn't shade towards anybody else because we're all very new. Because you've been doing it for like a year and a half, right?
Yeah, I bet just hit my year and a half.
Okay. Yeah. And so, because we're all new to it, very fresh. But aside from AJ, because he's my homie.
Yeah, yeah.
And we
love AJ.
Yeah, we hang out a lot. So aside from him, you've been like my favorite person to watch grow and get better because you're consistently getting better.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I've been working so fucking hard on it. It's like sometimes it's all I think about to the detriment of my normal life. I'm like, okay, comedy. Like, how am I going to make this funny? What's the next story I'm going to tell? Yeah. But I appreciate that. Yeah. I feel like I've been really blessed with people like really recognizing the effort that I'm putting into it. And so, I mean, the only thing I have to do is really just continue to do that. But I appreciate that. That's a very sweet compliment.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the amazing people over at High Desert Relief, a premier herbal destination right here in the state of New Mexico. They have extremely well-trained and knowledgeable staff that are more than happy to help you find what you're looking for or try something that you maybe have never thought of before. They have 2 locations right here in Albuquerque and a 3rd in Santa Fe. All 3 will be listed in the description of this episode below. All 3 locations offering legendary products at absolutely legendary prices, including this awesome merch that they were so kind enough to give me. They can be found at all 3 of the locations. Again, big thank you to all the people over at HDR. Back to the episode. No, it's the truth, man, because there is a lot of, because Albuquerque comedies is consistently growing, and there's a lot of, because like, and I've said this a million times, but I feel bad for Sarah and Kelly because they don't have a huge pool of comedians to pull from. And so and because that's pretty much the home club.
Yeah.
I mean, we have Casadas, but it's very, it's selective. It's hard to get into.
Absolutely.
And it's, you can't just walk up and ask. You know what I mean? You have to get selected for that.
I agree.
And bar shows are great. I mean, I'm fucking grateful as shit for Safe House. The Block has been great to me and AJ.
Yeah.
But as far as like comedy clubs go,
it's a different vibe. It's a whole different experience as a comedian,
and
too, I feel like.
And that's what you need.
Yeah.
And so they don't have a huge, I would say there's like 35 working comedians right now.
Yeah, I would say I would probably put more close to 45. I mean, I feel like people that are consistently at Dry Heat, I mean, I would say about 35 to 45.
Yeah.
There's probably like a good gap, about 10 that maybe I'm not thinking about.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, right now, I think it's like 80 comedians that are consistently coming out to mics on a like a weekly basis, and 80? Some of them are not. Yeah, we've got about 80 comedians here right now. That
I need to see that roster yesterday.
Yeah, no, I wish.
Because I think in this conversation we're having different definitions of the word comedian.
That's fair. I try not to. I think I'm
not even talking shit. I'm just being realistic.
No, that's a great way to like describe things too. I feel like is just like, well, and comedy's so subjective, right? Like, I've had people be like, for the longest time, I was like, oh, I'm not a comedian. I'm practicing comedy, right? Yeah. And people be like, no, you've gotten paid to do this. You're telling jokes on stage. Yeah. You're a comedian.
Well, that's the hump I've been trying to get myself over, too.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely a thing. I mean, I think if you are consistently going on stage, I think you are. I mean, what are we going to tell a poet who doesn't necessarily perform poetry out in public, not a poet?
Right. Oh, no,
yeah. Or like an author in that same way. It's like, that's how I think about it, I guess, is a little bit as if you are consistently working on it, you are a comedian.
No, I agree. And I'm not even saying that from a standpoint of like, are you consistently funny? Because I'm not fucking consistently funny. There have been times where
I'm not either.
Eat a fucking dick.
Oh, yeah.
And, but I'm saying that people that are consistently working on it, been doing it for a while. And, and I say that I feel bad for Sarah and Kelly because that pool is so small and you want to fill the lineup as much as you can with a variety of people. Mm-hmm. And so that creates a inherent pressure on people that are consistently doing it to get good as soon as humanly possible. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to be the stinker.
No, yeah, you don't want to be left behind. Oh my God. I mean, I'm thankful for these even newer like class of comedians, if they're not in the same class as us. But like sometimes, like one of them is Trey Holland. I don't know if you've seen Trey Holland recently.
I haven't.
So good. This dude can walk in with one topic and go 5 minutes and make consistent laughs out of it. He's like the blonde kid with glasses. He's a super sweet human being.
Wait, is he the dude that's like Trey with shoes on or whatever?
No. I don't know how else to describe it. He's been doing. I think he hasn't been out very much lately. I think he's not. He doesn't have a. He's getting a new car, and so he's been like wanting to do.
Oh
that,
no, I'm sorry. I was thinking of Barefoot Randy. Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that man.
I was thinking about somebody else.
No, but yeah, Trey is definitely like my new favorite. But every time he goes on, I'm like, even Penny too. Penny is like consistently surprising me.
Penny's like the taller chick, transgender, right?
Yeah.
Okay, back. Rest in peace to fucking Lizard Tail. But one of the last mics that they had, they're like maybe a month ago or so. It was right after. Yeah, it was about a month ago, right after I did In the Mountain Gods. This person had one of the best written jokes I have ever, and I don't want to steal it or I don't want to say it, but it was a joke about, it was comparing transgenders to Vietnam veterans.
Yes. Oh,
and
yeah, that's right.
I almost fell out of my fucking seat. I was laughing. I think about that joke like once a week.
Oh, it's
so
good. No. She's been the only other like person that I feel like has been able to roast me, and like I'm like, all right, yeah, okay, like you got me. No, yeah. So anytime I see those two walk on stage, I'm like, I'm gonna get left behind if I don't start working harder.
Does Trey wear glasses?
Yeah,
kind of shorter, not short, but like 5'8".
Yeah, about 5'8". Yeah,
okay, yeah, he's funny.
He's a funny, very funny. Yeah, he's funny. And consistently is writing new material. I mean, that man has to have at least 25 minutes of just consistent material, and he's only 6 months in. And you know, those are materials that I've seen him work out and consistently make people laugh. He's just got a great thing. I mean, I think it's the energy of the scene. I don't think if we weren't as loving and supporting of each other in this scene, I don't think we'd be doing as well, or people would be doing like getting as good. Because I think like to a certain extent, like, yeah, you go on, you know, you have a couple weeks where you're going to mics and no one's really talking to you. You're kind of new, right? But I feel like even in my first time, like my first set wasn't great. I still got laughs, but it wasn't great. But I still was able, someone came up to me afterwards, was like, I think you're good at this. And that was the only thing that I needed in that moment to make me feel like I could do it.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
And then I just kind of consistently snowballed from that, right? Just that little bit of confidence, I think, is so important. And there are scenes out in this country, but I think that's something that we have over like in Austin or New York or in LA, was where we're so connected in that way, and we're so trying to push everyone to be their best.
Yeah, and it's because I think it's two things. I think it's just there is obviously the elements, like the people inside of it, right? Because I mean, I've heard stories of what, we're in 2024, so just 5 years ago, 6 years, where it wasn't like that. And COVID just changed a lot from what I've heard. But I think a part of it is the people, but the other part of it is it's a necessity. Like there's a urgency of like, okay, if there's people doing it and they happen to have, they might, like you're just saying, they might not be good at it in that moment, but they might have like the like that spark is there.
Yeah.
The initial ability might be there somewhere. Encourage that person, because
absolutely, yeah,
that's what A. Marie did for me. Like I did my first open mic at Inside Out, the one that her and Buck used to do for like a very short amount of time, and I just ate a dick for like 3.5 minutes. It was horrible, not good. I mean, I look back at those jokes, I'm like, how the fuck did you think that was even a thing? You're talking about the Third Reich, and you're talking what is wrong with you?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. There's no stream of consciousness and whatever. But I had one joke that nobody laughed at except Steph in the very back. And I was like, oh, that's what that feels like. And then after the show, she was like, your writing fucking sucks, but you have good stage presence. Do you want to do 5 minutes in a month at my show? And I was like, sure.
Yeah. That's all it takes. It's sometimes just getting that first offer and you're like, oh, I got that bug now. Like all I want to do. And I feel like it's just the consistent energy for everyone is like, we're all trying to just get better. Like, let's get better. Let's all get booked in certain things. Let's all like grow together, because once one of us grows and we're all growing together, right? Like
usually.
Yeah, most of the time. I don't think there's really anyone here right now that I feel like if they did blow up that they would just instantly leave and be like, nope, I didn't know anybody there. That's just my opinion, and hopefully I won't be wrong, but I probably will be. But
yeah,
I think there's some people wrong here.
I'm not going to say who, but a couple names just fluttered in my head. Like, yeah, you'd say go fuck yourself to Albuquerque. But it's okay. It's okay. It's fine.
This is my city. I won't be that person. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, a good example of someone who didn't do that was Anthony A.
Yeah.
He always gives love to Albuquerque. That's just who he is. You go to Mike's a lot more than I do. Is there a replacement for Lizard Tail right now on Monday?
No. There hasn't been. I know that Jake is trying to find somewhere, and I really hope he does.
Yeah.
But as of right now, no. But we'll see. I mean, I'm kind of like this like slow period. I'm like, Oh, on Mondays I'm doing trivia. I'm like, I'm not thinking about comedy. I'm going over here and testing my knowledge. But
how much time are you dedicating to writing typically?
Writing,
I know it's tough.
Yeah,
but...
I would say I would try to do like 13 minutes or 30 minutes probably once a day, where I'm kind of just like, I'm in the mode. I'm like, okay, here's a story. What would make this story funny? Where's one things that I can pull out and pick that I think would really shine on stage with my style and stuff like that. But a lot of it is like, I'm not necessarily, from my way of doing it, is I'm thinking of stories, and I know those stories well enough that I can go on stage and talk about them. And my first run through of a joke is always just hearing myself say it. I don't really give a shit what the audience is going to say. You know, a lot of the time we're at open mics, it's comedians. I'm like, no, this is for me. I want to know how I say it, because that helps me then go in and go, okay, to me, this is where I'm lacking. I didn't give this space enough pause, you know, so on and so forth. But I will write out jokes once they're complete. Yeah. That's when I'll go into like my folder on my computer and be like, okay, now I'm going to add this joke, and I'll fully write it out how I'm saying and how I want to have it. But most of the time it's all in my head, and I have little short phrases that I'll put on my phone, and that I'll know that's the story that I'm going to go for. And I think for me, that gives me a lot of room to continue to build off of it. I feel like if I set it in stone, a lot of the time I'll be like, okay, that's done. I don't need to work on that anymore. And I think especially being so new, that's a detriment to my comedy if I'm not consistently making my good jokes even better.
Yeah. I think because I certainly felt it for a while when I was going to mics a lot, when I had time to do it, but I felt that pressure a lot. It was like, you have to keep coming up with new stuff. Where it's like, that's not necessarily true. Work on the things that are still working, because to think that you're even not just like a year and a half, but like 4, 5, 6 years into it, and your material is as good as it can be. If it is, that sucks.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't want to
you want to keep mining the things that are working, because you already have momentum. Yeah. Carry that out, milk it as much as you can, rather than just like getting these little tiny punches, these little tiny things that kind of fizzle out, or maybe that's what I'm going through right now. I look at the 10 minutes I did at Casadas, and like 5 minutes of it don't work anymore, whether it's because it's political stuff that have died out. Like, I had some pretty good shit. I didn't do it at Casadas, did it at Dry Heat a while back, but I had some pretty good shit about the debates between Biden and Trump.
Do remember, yeah.
That doesn't work anymore. And then there's some stuff I used to do about the military that I just want to get away from, because I don't want to be labeled as like a bro vet comedian, or like just like a military comedian, because that's not fucking good.
Yeah.
You don't want to pigeonhole yourself that way. But so it's like, okay, I've got 5 minutes here that I know works, rather than coming up with brand new stuff. Work on things that are actually working and flourishing right now, and kind of just build off momentum that way. And then, like you're saying, with just having points and going to a mic, I think one of the most, and this is something that I picked up from, I heard Hinchcliffe say it a lot on Kill Tony, where it's like, the best thing you could do for yourself, it sounds counterintuitive, but trim the fat as much as you can. Like, get rid of all the things that just don't work.
Oh, yeah.
And have just things that are consistently working, and just figure out how that, because I've noticed now even the way that I write is different than it was 6 months ago, 8 months ago.
Oh yeah, well, the way that I'm like understanding like my version of a punchline is so like, and I feel like that's different for a lot of people. There's similarities between people, but I feel like for me, I have this specific way of trying to get my punchline across, and so it's like now writing those jokes to push that even further. But I think that's right. I mean, since I started, I was always, someone told me to be like, get to the point.
Yeah.
Right. And we're trimming that fat. We're getting to that point. And so if I have to explain something to an audience because they might not know what it is, I have 30 seconds to do that.
And that's a lot of time.
That's still even a lot of time. That's the most I'm going to give myself to describe what I'm trying to talk about. Because at that point, you go over 30 seconds, you're losing everybody. They're now thinking about the past 30 seconds and trying to wrap their head around this concept.
Unless you're a really captivating storyteller.
Yeah.
Like a very, I hate to go all the way to the top, but like Dave Chappelle does that now. Mm. Now, granted, he's also kind of earned that because he's one of the greatest to ever do it, so people will sit and watch him do that. But I'm sure there are other comedians way below him, lower than him, that are just really great storytellers.
Yeah.
Where they're able to hold an audience's attention for 30 seconds, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then build up to a huge punch. But doing that a year and a half in, 2 years in, that's a gamble.
Oh, that's such a gamble.
That's going to the roulette table and betting on green. Like that's
absolutely.
If you miss that, then you're dead in the water.
Yeah, you just wasted half a minute of your 5-minute set, or your 10-minute set on this setup that now you've then confused more people about.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh man. And then that's when I see a lot of comedians just like get out and they're like, they realize that that's what they've done. And then they try to backpedal and you're like, nope, just keep on going. Just keep on going. Like in music, you're not supposed, if you fuck up a song, you don't stop. Like you could just continue going. And I've always I've taken that from music into comedy of like, all right, like, I know I messed up most of the time, unless it's a comedian who's seen me before. They don't know that I'm messing up, like, you know. And so it's just like continue to have that, and sometimes that even plays off of new parts of the joke, right? Is like forgetting just in that second what the next phrase is going to be, and then you start talking about this thing, like, but. Yeah, I think at most 30 seconds before you're done. Like, you're done explaining something.
Are you finding that as you're working on materials, I'm realizing this recently, that especially because you're very not eccentric, but like you have some act outs in your set that I've seen you do, some verbal. Are you noticing that like you're getting more out of jokes not by doing some non-verbal things, whether it's like facial expressions or emotions that explains it a lot more? It's like, that's all I had to do.
Yeah.
Was like raise my eyebrow. Yep. And that made people laugh? Are you fucking kidding me?
No, sometimes a face, you don't even have to have a good punchline if you have a good face after what you're trying to say. Like, there's some jokes that I will purposely, like, look like I'm pondering off. Like, oh my God, I just said that, right? Like, and that I think helps, like an audience sometimes, but all the time. All the time I'm finding that, like, just having a little bit of like body language to add to that is just another, like, it's like not a fluff in that way, like in a bad way, but it just is adding more room to that laugh. And the biggest thing that I'm noticing is is giving a punchline places to breathe, right? If you have something, giving even like, if no one laughs at that very first part, sometimes it's just because they're trying to get to that punchline with what you're saying. They're getting caught up, and so you have to give them that like couple extra seconds to get caught up. And sometimes you'll even catch the one like weird laugh in the crowd, and that'll get everybody in, and that lowers everybody's like wall, so that you can then go in with another joke that maybe would be really quick and like kind of doing that. But especially for one-liners, I feel like I've been writing a fuck ton of one-liners, not even just for the competition, but for just like myself. I love one-liners. But yeah, just giving them room to breathe. Yeah. Just giving your words room to breathe sometimes is important, right? I try never, if I'm going to give a pause, I don't want it to be more than 15 seconds. But, again, sometimes I've had a joke where I got a standing ovation for more than 15 seconds, and it was like, okay, I got to just let this ride out. They're feeling it, like, and to that moment I was like, I remember even saying and being like, oh, we're standing up for this. I had no idea. And that made more people laugh. And you're like, so you're just like, it's a beautiful thing to be able to hold up the mirror to a crowd in that way and just kind of be their voice in that second, like of like what they're thinking too. I think is a thing that I'm trying to work on, is really being in tune with what a crowd's thinking.
Especially with how a crowd is thinking. How do you not write around, but how do you because you have some fucking jokes, like the porn titles joke. I love that joke, but it is so fucking disgusting, and it is so vile, right?
It can be, yeah.
Like, what do you do to build into that? Do you consciously build into it? Do you warm into it? Because I've seen that joke do really well, and then I've seen that joke absolutely die.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? So like, what do you with a joke like that? Because this is something I'm working through myself. Yeah. How do you feel you set that joke up for success the best? And just jokes in that vein where it's like, it's horrible, it's vile what you're saying. Yeah. But if you set it up right, it works.
I think so. I mean, I the way that I'm trying to do that right now is finding the individual pieces of my set that fit together. So like if I'm going to be doing all of my like sex material, or if I'm going to be talking about like bottom surgery or those things, that's when I can bring those jokes in. Those are kind of like either the beginning of a set in that way, or the beginning of that part of my set, or the end of that set, right? So like I have another joke where I talk about like no longer masturbating to pornography and masturbating to the thought of someone loving me, right? Which everyone understands. I feel like deep down understands. If you've ever been lonely, you understand what that feels like. And so that already like puts people... They're already primed for it. I've already said something that's way too ridiculous to not laugh at, right? And so bringing that in, and I've noticed that like it sometimes with what breaks down on that joke specifically that I'm seeing in crowds is some people just don't understand the terminology that I'm using, right? If I'm like, genderless slut, so short king, like that's a pretty good one, right? People understand what that means. But I feel like once we get into like the trans or like the daddy dominating a trans woman into knowing what real love is like, right? Like those are things that I feel like sometimes I lose a specifically like straight crowd. Like I have a whole like 8 minutes of set that only really works in a queer crowd, and it does not work in a cis crowd. It can. And it can, but it's so hard to get people to understand what I'm trying to talk about in that way. And it's like, especially here in Albuquerque, we have a big like Catholic population and a Christian population. So when I start talking about God, people instantly will sometimes turn off. And so that's the thing is, if I'm going to prime that joke, I have to know that the audience has to know that I'm already saying ridiculous things.
See, and that's what trips me up when I do my Christian material, because it's like they're like, I've ran into crowds like a Dry Heat, for example, where the vibe that I got off of them is like they're religiously left. And I'm like, what? Okay, wait a minute. Are we allowed to laugh at ourselves, or are we not allowed to laugh at ourselves? I've just done 6 minutes of material where you people are laughing at pedophile jokes, you're laughing at AIDS jokes, you're laughing at suicide jokes. But when I don't even make fun of, because I'm a Christian myself, and I say that in the set to try to like, hey, we're laughing at ourselves.
Yeah.
But then it's like, I'm not making fun of Christianity or people who believe in it. I'm making fun of things around it.
Yeah.
And that's where we die off. Like, okay, whatever. But then there's other rooms where they're like they're super right, and they've laughed at it. Like, I did my Passion of the Christ joke in Into the Mountain Gods. My Christian material leading up to it was great. The Passion of the Christ joke, you could have heard a pin drop. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was too far?
I've even had queer crowds be like, oh, church. Like, oh.
Well, that makes sense, though.
And to a certain extent, but I think we all have that. I think there's still, like, I mean, with any, like, religious group, everyone's growing and learning, and we've all had shitty pastors or shitty, like, youth pastors. So we all have, like, some form of trauma that may become from that. Or, like, also the thought of God watching you while you're laughing at God is not always, like, the best thought. And I feel like people get really nervous. I don't know why.
I think God has a sense of humor. He has to.
Oh, yeah. What? Of course.
He has to. Like, what's it called? A platypus? You ever seen a platypus? That's a beaver with a duck bill. Like, that's God with a sense of humor.
No, yeah. If that, like, general, like, idea exists, he has to, or, like, everything would be perfect, right? If not, if God can't, like, understand and give us that, like, that freedom to do whatever we want and whoever we are, right? It's like, he has to.
Go like that.
Oh, okay.
Get some water on you.
Yeah, I appreciate you. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard sometimes when people shut off, because, like, it's hard to know exactly when they do it when you're in the middle of a set, right? You're in the middle of a joke and you say one thing, or, like, the vibe changes. It could be, like, what someone's dealing with in that week, or maybe their mom is with them in the crowd and their mom is super religious, but maybe you're not as much, right? So it's like, who wants to have a conversation with their mom on the way back from a comedy club being like, why did you laugh at that Jesus joke? And you're like, oh, mom, and so I feel like it's a little bit of everything, but I mean, yeah, I always try not to, like, ever punch down on anybody specifically, and especially when I'm talking about Christianity. It's just, like, my thought or my perspective on something, right? And that's just me personally. No one has to laugh, and I've definitely, like, there's times where I know, like, certain jokes are just not going to work in a certain crowd. You can already tell, and so I try to, like, always, I have jokes that'll, like, prime people and or prime, like, let me know what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like the porn title joke is a great way of knowing where that
That's
crowd
a
is
primer?
at. Oh yeah, it's great. It's a great way to know what people are feeling. Like,
I mean, I guess
if you're not gonna laugh at genderless slut show Short King the Top Shelf, then there's certain jokes in my next 5 minutes that I probably should change and move around. And it's just like it's all those things. It's like, I know if a crowd's, like, super not about trans stuff, if, like, my first joke, or if I, like, go on stage and I'm like, hey, before I get bottom surgery, whatever, right? And it's like, if they're not going to laugh at that, then I instantly have to go, I'm not going to do this material until I know that I've got this crowd in my pocket, right? I'm in that pocket with that crowd where they know they can trust me, they can trust, like, my sense of humor, and that'll get some people to open up. But I'm still learning. I mean, yeah, that was a big thing for, like, I would say, like, 4 months. This probably right after my year, I was like, why aren't people laughing? I don't understand why people aren't laughing at certain parts of my set. And a lot of comedians were just coming up to me being like, it's the Jesus shit. People are turning off as soon as we can hear it in the back, people are turning off when you start talking about Jesus. And I'm like, okay. So then I have to figure out, either have to make those jokes better, or maybe it's not for specific crowds. And so I have to figure out those. But I think priming people is really a good way.
I think it's the former.
Yeah.
And because I've definitely experienced that because my Christian material is not where it needs to be, but I think it's the former, because I think you can write about anything. It's just with sensitive topics, like, especially now today where there's like this whole cultural resurgence of Christianity, I feel like you have to be so sharp about it and smart about it, where it's like you have to display up front that you're not punching down. Mm-hmm. And then even with that, you have to maintain that energy in your set where it's like, I'm not making fun of the figure. Or even if you're
or
going
you
to,
as a right?
Or if you're going to make, like, I think a great example of that is Mark Maron, where he has that joke about where Christians think the only good Jew's a dead one. I'm a devout Christian. That's a funny fucking line. I couldn't help but laugh at that, because it's like, damn, that's fucked up, but it's funny.
Yeah, and it has like some truth to it, right? It's the way that we like, and it's just that specific. I feel like sometimes he just takes that specific image of something, and then he's just talking about like that specific
and turns it on
angle.
its head.
Yeah, and that's a part of comedy. I mean, I think Anthony Jeselnik, if I'm correct, talks about like walking that line a lot of the time, and as comedians, like, you can say whatever you want, but you've got to walk that line. You've got to be able to be sharp enough to walk that line, so you're not teetering on like being too sensitive about something, but also not like overly rude about something.
Well, you can't show your hand, and you can't ever let the audience know that not that you don't believe what you're saying, but you don't have confidence in your own material. A. And B, that's a great example, because one of my favorite quotes that he's had is, comedy is getting away with it. Yep. And if you didn't get away with it, it wasn't comedy, at least in their perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
It comes off as just me. It's funny to bring up Anthony Jeselnik. Like, I was listening to, yesterday, I was re-listening to Caligula. You ever heard that album?
I haven't, no.
It's so fucking good. It's on Spotify.
Okay.
That's one of the first comedy albums I ever listened to. And it holds up. Like, he has a joke about rape where he goes... And it's one of his opening, I think it's his opening joke, or like one of his opening jokes, where he talks about, like, he gets really drunk at a party, he takes a girl home, and the girl is really fucked up. He's like, I did the gentlemanly thing. I tucked her in, and I left her a note for the morning. You just got raped. And the room fucking just fucking explodes the way but it's the way, granted, they also know who they're gonna see, so they're like, when you listen to his material, it's like, oh, where's he taking this?
Yep.
What is he about? What horrible thing is he about to say? And then he just makes it so much worse. But it's his mannerisms, the way he looks at the crowd, the way he does it. It's very deadpan. Like, I remember I was watching a clip of his where he walked out onto the he's in the Comedy Store, and he walks out, and he's got his notebook. And he looks at his notes, he looks at the crowd, and he goes, oh, no, I don't have this because I don't know my set. I just don't respect you as an audience. And they just fucking die.
Yeah.
And I was saying, but there's a little bit of truth to it, where it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of truth to that. If you're doing a paid show, or just a show in general, it's not an open mic, you probably shouldn't have your fucking notes on stage.
I agree with that. I think to a certain point, and we're all new. I think for a lot of our class, there's a couple people that'll have that issue. But I think it's just practicing. I think it's just practicing your material and memorizing. And I think it does, because when I'm watching somebody and they bring out their notebook at a paid event, I'm like, well, I'm paying attention to your notebook. I'm not paying attention to you.
Well, no, I would take it a step further than that. I'm paying attention to your insecurity. I'm paying attention to your lack of professionalism. Excuse me, as I fucking burp into a microphone. I'm paying attention to your lack of professionalism. I'm looking at your lack of preparedness. Like, you can't remember 8 minutes of things you wrote.
Yeah.
Assuming you wrote them. Assuming they are your jokes and you're not a joke thief.
Yeah.
You can't remember 8 minutes of things you've said or you've written, you've thought about, in theory, you've practiced.
Yeah, you shouldn't be reading it off. It sounds like you're reading like a presentation at a school,
exactly.
And I'm like, okay, that takes me out of it personally.
As
someone who loves the art form of that. Yeah, I mean, I think grab grab a set list. You know, musicians have set lists all the time. Sometimes comics will have a piece of paper taped to the stool where they put their drink with the list of jokes that they're about to tell. They're not looking at a notebook, but they know which one's coming up just in case something, you know, someone interrupts them or heckles, and, you know, you have to get back on that track.
Well, I think that's where it separates from music, though, because I think the best comedians, regardless of their style, whether it's the Dave Attell or Anthony Jeselnik, where they have stories, but they're mostly one-liners, or they're mostly just set up punch tag.
Yeah.
Whether they're like that or they're the more storyteller types, the best comedians make it feel like a conversation with the audience, but they just happen to be the funniest person in the room.
Yep.
And you have to put no effort into the conversation as an audience member. That's the best comedian. They're talking right to you.
Yeah.
And it's hard to talk to like, I mean, I'm sure you've had interactions in real life where you think you're having a conversation with somebody and they're like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah, for sure,
yeah,
oh yeah, that's a good point, June." And you're like, "Was it a good point? Tell me what I just said."
Oh yeah, I've had people like look me in the eyes and go, and then walk away mid conversation, and I'm like, I'm autistic as the next gal, but. Fuck, I understand that you're not listening. Like, you know, I'm like, goodness gracious.
That is a social cue I can pick up on.
Yeah, at least, right? Like, I will lose a lot of respect for a person if I've been like, nope, you're not someone I want to talk to anymore.
But then, so that's how I feel about someone bringing their set on stage.
I agree. I mean, I think just take the time out of your week when you're writing jokes to memorize that. Go in front of a mirror if that's going to help you, you know? Practice not going on stage at an open mic before you go on this show. And like, you know, and I'm not going to say that everybody has the easiest, like the best memories or whatever. I'm not going to tell someone that they can't do something. But
we'll put the weed down.
Yeah.
Stop smoking for a bit.
Just a little bit before your set, or just know your limits so that you know when you're capable of doing your job.
And I think that's the beautiful part of, well, that's a good point of putting it like that, doing your job. It is a job.
Yeah.
If you're taking it seriously, especially if you're on a paid show, or not even a paid show, if you're on a show, because not every show that I've been on that's been ticketed, I've gotten paid for, that's for sure. But if it's people that are paying to go to the show, treat it like a job.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about stand-up is if you're doing enough work with your material, eventually it just becomes like building blocks.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, I've learned this piece of the Lego set. Now I've learned this piece of the Lego set, and they're both 4 minutes. Now I have 8. Now this big piece of Lego set is going to get with this new piece of Lego set. Now it's 12.
Yep.
And now it's 13. It just builds and builds and builds and builds.
Yeah.
And then you have fucking people like Kurt Fletcher just go up there and they do like 20 minutes of one-liners, and it's like, holy fuck, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful fucking thing.
It is a great thing. No, and he's so good at one-liners. I mean, I think that's where we're heading. Like, besides like, you know, these like online specials or these crowd work specials, I want to see more comics do one-liner specials where they go up with 25 minutes of one-liners and they're consistently just killing it, just bop bop bop. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a job. I think that like we're coworkers, right? This is us as coworkers hanging out and doing something outside of work, right? And I think that like you've got to treat it that way. If you're getting paid for this and you want this to be your job, you should treat it just like you do your corporate job. And it's just as important to be professional and civil with the people that you're around. I think if you have issues, you should talk with people about it. And like, you don't have to be best friends with everybody, but at least be like civil, right? Because if you're not going to be civil at work, it's most of the time it's going to be you, the one that gets fired. You know, that doesn't get asked back, that doesn't get asked to do these things. And so I think it's important that, yeah, you treat this as a job. You know, you don't go 2 years into doing something with a notebook on, you know, like with how to make a Starbucks drink after being there for a year, right? Unless it's a new drink, right? If it's a new drink, I kind of get it. But again, there's a time and place for that. And I think open mics are a great time to practice that. But I agree. I think that's what I always tell new people when they ask me like what they should do when it comes to open mics. I'm like, write a solid 5 minutes. Go to one open mic a week for starting out. Get that 5 minutes that you wrote solid as fuck, right? Then you can now take that 5 minutes to a whole new open mic with a whole new crowd of people, a whole new group of comedians, and kill it there automatically. Then you start working on that new 5 at the old mic, right? And then you just continue to do that. That's how I did it. That's how I was able to get a good 15 minutes within a year of doing that. And not to say that it was like a perfect 15 minutes, but I feel like it wasn't my worst 15 minutes that I'll probably ever do.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and if you're being realistic too, when you're taking 5 minutes and working on it, it'll probably drop down to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it builds back into 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Like your 15, if we're being realistic, you have, of your 15 that's serviceable, you probably have 8 to 10 that's solid.
Yeah.
And then you can rework that last 5 to 7 and then turn it into something better. And it just consistently evolves and it builds like that. And yeah, I mean, a lot of doing this that I've found is networking, and a lot of it's just how professional are you? Do you show up on time? Are you sober when you're there? And if you're not sober when you're there, are you still funny, or are you just belligerent?
Yeah, are you able to still have conversations with people? Yeah.
Yeah,
be easy to work with. I think that's a huge thing, is like go into even an open mic and be easy to work with, and that puts you so much further in people's minds for shows, for podcasts, for all these things, because they know that you're going to be easy to work with. You can go in somewhere, you can have a decent time, and then you can leave, right? Like being a prima donna as an open micer will not get you anywhere. Showing up an hour and a half late to a show will not get you anywhere. It will not get you anywhere, especially to the show. Is all I'm saying.
Well, it is embarrassing for some people involved when you should have been at a big show at a pretty big venue, and there's someone that when people say Albuquerque comedy, this person's name comes to mind, and he reads off your name to get on stage, and you're not in the fucking building. Ooh, that could be an issue.
Oh, yeah, you're not going to get asked back. You're going to lose opportunities, and people aren't going to want to work with you, and it's going to take another 2 years of you rebuilding that connection with that group of people, and that's all you can really do. I mean...
Well, even, it's funny you say about, being presentable for podcasts. There was one person that I had in mind, that could be a lot of fun. And then I saw this person act a certain way at an open mic, and I was like, oh, you aren't coming to my home.
Yeah.
That's all right. Never mind. Never mind. And it's funny you say, treating things professionally. I've had over the last, month or so, but it really hit me today where I was like, and I haven't said this on the podcast before because I'm not ready. I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a rebrand coming here pretty soon, within the next 6 months. Because when I chose the name for this, I still like it. I'm not ashamed of it. I like the name. But when I chose the name for this, I didn't expect this to go longer than 6 months. I did not expect this to become this is pretty much a full-time job.
Yeah.
And I don't get paid a lot of money to do it, but I get money to do it, which is still mind-boggling to me. But I get paid, I'm working right now, which is weird. But I get paid to do this, and I know that I have a good product, but I know that the name is not the most marketable thing. I know that growing any podcast or growing a brand in general is tough, but I know that there is going to be there's going to be a ceiling for this brand, and it's going to come sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So I would rather, while I'm still on the lower levels of all this, rebrand, make it more marketable, because the name itself, obviously people get associated with OnlyFans, and that was part of the joke, but the jokes died out. And I do want it to be taken a little more seriously. You know what I mean? It's still a fun, goofy thing, and
it should be. It should be that environment, right, to it. But it still can be a serious thing that you're doing. Yeah,
it still needs to be, because after I put out that Trump episode that I did, I had a few people hit me up about they took me up on my offer, coming in here and debating me on my points, and I would like that. And now both of those episodes are probably going to still be under this brand, but just in the future, having those conversations happen under a more serious or a more marketable brand, and then just also having a better name will put myself out there, and I'll get. I know that there are probably a couple of guests, including a local politician. That, now granted, he ghosted me twice, but it is what it is. I feel like if I had a more marketable name, it would have been more. It would have been an easier sell. Let's put it that way.
No, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because I know there are doors that are not going to open because of it. So again, it's treating it like a job.
Sponsorships, branding, all those things are important.
Yeah, being more professional and doing it. And the same thing as being a comedian. Make yourself as open to as many possibilities as you can. And you're saying a little bit earlier about, you some of your material will work in this crowd, but might not work with this crowd. Have you found yourself getting to the point where you have enough steady material that you can switch things out, puzzle piece things together.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like, okay, this isn't working. So I'm gonna how long did it take you to not only just realize you had to do that, but now you're comfortable doing that? Like, are you comfortable doing that on the fly? Because I'm not. That's for fucking sure.
Depends. It just depends on the vibe of the show. Like, I'll have an easier time doing it if I'm more comfortable on stage. If I'm feeling uncomfortable, then I'm like, no, I have no way of doing that. And I'm still struggling with it at certain points. There's definitely been shows where I'm like, oh, should have definitely cleaned up it a little bit. Like, didn't realize that like 7 children walked in right before my set, and then I didn't, and then you're in the middle of the show looking a child in the eye, saying the things that you're saying. Yeah, and you're like,
I watched that happen at the block, and I was like, "Oh fuck!
Yeah,
there are families here." No, and that's not your fault.
No, I mean,
because they marketed that show as an 18 and above show. That is how they marketed it. But I watched you do a certain joke, and I was like, "Damn."
Yep. No, it happens. I mean, like, if you're gonna book me at a certain point, you recognize that, like, that's the material that I'm gonna work with.
Which I knew, and AJ and I both knew.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's not a regretful part of our.
No, I wasn't too worried about it. Like, I mean, I got good laughs. I got good people. Like, I had people come up to me after the show and be like, "Hey, that was really great. Like, I really had fun. Like, this is great that you're doing it here." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm so excited to be here." Like, those are, I think, in those moments, that's what means a lot to me, especially now. But yeah, I mean, I'm getting to a better point where I can. It's just like I have my I know, if you ask me to go on stage right now, I have 10 minutes. I know that 10 minutes from back to front, And so it's like, if I know that I'm going to do that, I would have to have more time to be like, okay, is this going to be an older crowd? Like, or is this, okay, if it's going to be an older crowd, let's talk about some older topics. Let's talk about like the coming out really works with an older crowd. And it works with all crowds, but specifically an older crowd. Like,
why?
Just because of the Obama jokes. I think that breaks a lot of the barrier when I first start, right? Is I talk about my dad and I go, oh yeah, I haven't seen them angry since the first time Obama got elected, right? And I think whether you are a fan of that president, you weren't a fan of that president, whatever, you still know who he is. You understand like the frustration people were having in that moment, right?
The vitriol of the situation.
Yeah, and that brings everybody down just a little bit, right? And then I can go in with this crazier topic or about like this, crazier words, and then bring it back in before I go into that last bit. And so, but no, I'm getting better at it. I'm not great at it either. I mean, it's definitely something that I need to be better at. It's just making sure that I have it ready, and like I have my set list. I always have like a little set list that I have, and it'll have all of my jokes on it, and I have it at the biggest fucking like thing, and I'll set it on the thing, and I'll see it. I'm like, all right, I can do that joke right now, and that'll work. So I'm getting better at it, but yeah, I'm still not great at that. It's definitely something that I have to work on.
What scares you about comedy right now? As a comedian, like just doing comedy, like through your point of view, like what scares you about just the endeavor of doing stand-up comedy?
Oh goodness, that I'm not pushing more, like that I'm not accomplishing more at the time. I feel like I'm getting that like itch. I'm like, okay, I'm not getting booked at certain places quite yet. I'm not getting these things. It's like, am I falling behind? Right? I think that's what scares me the most, is that I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea how to make this happen as a career, other than just like go up and do it consistently. And I know that's a big part of it, but I feel like the business aspect of it, kind of getting to the point where like I can get out of Albuquerque, I can make money doing this, I can go start traveling and doing that. Social media scares me a lot of it too. Also, just like, I mean, yeah, those are things. I think social media is probably the scariest part of it for me right now, because it feels like I don't want to do everything that everyone else is doing. I want to do something that's specifically fresh to me and fresh to my audience, and like something that I can build an audience that I know will like my comedy while still being able to reach out to other people. I think that's kind of scary, is like not knowing what I'm doing. I have no idea.
That's fair. Well, I think, and I'd hate to like lean into complacency at all. It's definitely not that. But I think being so early into it, I don't think people in our position have to worry too much about the business part of it.
That's what I've been told.
Like don't
often.
And because where my brain immediately goes to is like, okay, let's say you knew the business part of it decently well, and you're able to get booked out of town for some reason. You're able to get booked out of town, or you're able to get attached to somebody and go on like a little, let's say like 4-city spree or whatever it is. Wouldn't you rather do that when you're a lot better than you are right now? Like, that's what I think about. You know what I mean? When you are like, because like, I can confidently say that we both have sets that are good.
Yeah.
Like, we can survive.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the goal. The goal is to be really good. The goal is to be great. And wouldn't you rather have those bigger opportunities or have those out of Albuquerque or even like here in New Mexico, getting bigger opportunities?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather have those come when you have the great, like when you are like, oh, fuck, okay, wait, I'm good at this. Oh, I'm really good at this. You know what I mean?
I do. I think it's a little bit of both. I think that
that's not to say to turn down opportunities when you get them.
No, not at all.
I mean, that would be a hypocrite.
Yeah.
I would be a hypocrite to say, hey, turn down things when you don't think you're ready. Because I didn't think I was fucking ready to do Into the Mountain Gods. I didn't think I was ready to do Casadas. Now, thank God those both went well.
Yeah.
Fucking thank God those both went well. But, you know, now I know that I can do that. But I also, you know, the next time those come, I want to be so much better than I was. Or than I am right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely take the opportunity that I haven't gotten some of those things is just like, okay, let's get so much better so that when I do have that. But I mean, I don't think I would be necessarily pushing that. I think there's just like small things that like I would want to be doing, like, auditioning for like roles and like small parts in movies and stuff like that, which I feel like I could do now and do a pretty good job at. And it didn't have to be anything like major, but that's something that I want to get into, right? As a comedian, I feel like that's a big goal for me as well. But no, I mean, it just feels like sometimes I'm being left behind by my own self. I feel like that's the scariest thing to me. But no, I think you're absolutely right. I think those opportunities will come. You know, it's the same thing. It's like I would love to be booked at Casadas or Hyenas right now. Like that's my like goal, right? That's like
is Hyenas opening up?
They've been having shows. What? They started shows in November.
Get the fuck out of here.
Or even October, I'm pretty sure.
No, because I saw
because they had people booked in October.
So they did, but they didn't happen.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they didn't happen. So, like for instance, Uncle Laser was supposed to come in October. And that's where I'll just leave that. But he was supposed to come in October. And he didn't end up coming, obviously, because the place wasn't open. But if you go to Hyenas right now, the first show is until February.
Oh, wow. So they're pushing it back. Yeah, I have no idea at this point then. Yeah, I mean, I've heard so many things about that.
I hope they open up because I've heard amazing things about Hyenas. And I've also been told, I mean, I think Sarah said it on this podcast where it was like, oh, fuck, that's not good. Fucking Sam Town was supposed to come, and he is no longer on the lineup. That is fucking because he was supposed to come in January. That's depressing.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah,
Sam Talent's cool.
Yeah, he's the shit. But I remember Sarah was telling me on this podcast that if you get past at the first thing is in February, then it kicks out to like March and May. But if you get past, because I think they are, what's the company called? I want to say it's Helium Comedy or something like that.
There's Laughs, Helium, and then Laugh Factory.
But if you get booked in, or if you get past at Hyenas, you get past at all of the Hyenas. Yep. Like you're in the system.
No, you can start performing
and that makes you a road comic if you can get booked and all that kind of stuff. You have to have a following and on social media and blah, blah, blah. But that's a huge opportunity to have coming to Albuquerque too. And I'm very curious to see, because I know that, because I think Steven Casada said it on Buck's podcast, where like him and the owner of Hyenas are good friends. So I wonder if they're going to help if Hyenas is even open to like local comics going up there and doing their thing.
Absolutely.
We'll fucking see. It'd be nice.
I mean, if anything, they need to have a mic. I mean, this is another thing that an out-of-town comic told me, specific with Hyenas, is that they're not going to fly in people unless the touring comic already has an MC on tour with them. They're not flying out MCs.
Right, no.
So they're gonna have to dip into the local comedians here at some point. Even if it doesn't happen right away, it's gonna have to happen at some point. So I'm not too worried about that. Yeah, I mean, I think like even just going back to like that booking stuff, it's like, yeah, I mean, if they don't feel like that they don't want to work with me, at some point they're going to have to. That's it. I'm going to work so hard that people can't refuse to work with me.
Well, that's one of that should be the mindset. Really, that's one of my favorite Rogan quotes is be undeniable. Yep. Now, granted, obviously, like we said a little bit earlier, you have to be cordial. You have to be a good person to work with.
It's a triangle, for sure.
But even if if there's something about your comedy they don't like or whatever it is, if you're funny should be the barrier to entry.
Yep.
And that's a conversation that I have, and I'll just say this, I don't mind saying this publicly. This is a conversation that I have on a weekly basis with AJ when we're booking like the Safe House shows or we're booking the Block. It's like, yo, funny has to be the barrier to entry. Nothing else. It doesn't matter if you don't like this person. It doesn't matter if we don't like hang out with this person or whatever it is. Are they funny?
Yeah.
And what I really like about what he's doing with the next couple of shows is he's pulling a lot of motherfuckers out of Santa Fe and having them come down.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a huge gap between Santa Fe and Albuquerque comedy that needs to get bridged, and it just hasn't lately or at all. And I'm not too sure why. I'll be completely honest. I'm not too sure why. Because every Santa Fe comic, not that there's been a lot, but every Santa Fe comic, the comic that I've worked with, has been nothing but great to me.
Yeah.
Like TJ and John,
shout out TJ.
like they've been fucking great to me.
John is absolutely wonderful. Yeah. I love Isabel. I love
she's funny.
Sarah Matthews. She's also wonderful.
I've heard great things about her.
Yeah. Yeah, they're all very funny. No, I went out, the Sluts did a show out there and either early October or late September, and it was like one of my favorite shows I've done. It was great. It was a brand new crowd. They were all really funny. All the local comics were really funny.
Where is it at?
It was at
Was it the Social Kitchen?
Yeah, I think so. It was one of the
little bar inside the hotel.
Yep. Yeah.
I did, and that's what I realized about doing TJ's show because I should have, but I didn't ask him beforehand how much time he wanted from me. So I was like, hey, how much time do you want me to do? He goes, well, what are you comfortable with? I'm like, I've got 10. And he goes, okay. Well, the crowd's here and it's a pretty packed room and we don't really have a time limit. So how about this? I'll light you at 11. If you go longer than 17, we'll do it. Like, yeah. I'll give you a hard light at 17. I was like, at 17. Okay. And I was granted, again, political time was on my side. That was the night that Trump got shot. That was the night.
Yeah, damn.
And so, like, it was funny because me and my buddy Nick, we had just done a podcast. We got absolutely stoned out of our minds. And so I'm putting everything away, cutting the cameras. And I open up my phone, and it says 12 minutes ago, Donald Trump shot at rally. And I was like, oh, no. Outside of, like, the political ramifications, that was my brain obviously went to of, like, is this it? Like, is this when we start the Civil War? Like, is this it? The other part of my brain was like, dude, you are stoned to the gills, and you have 4 hours to write material before you got to get your ass up to Santa Fe. And, but I ended up doing, that was my longest set so far. I think I did 15.
Wow.
And some change. And I just never had like the opportunity to do it. And thankfully it all went well. And there's this one dude, gay as the day is long. I'm talking like crossed legs, painted nails, little bit of makeup going on, funny hat, dressed very well. And he was sitting at the bar just staring me down because of my material, staring me down. It took 10 minutes to get this fucker to laugh. And finally, once he laughed, I was like, I fucking got you.
Yeah.
I fucking got
you.
Yep.
But I know that feeling very well.
But it felt good to like get everyone on my side, get everyone laughing, and then to be able to have like, and I'll always be thankful for TJ for letting me do 15.
I love TJ. Yeah.
I definitely probably shouldn't have let me do that far, but I did, and like having like the material like about Trump getting shot, trying that out, and then it was, Santa Fe's cool, man.
Yeah, it was a cool show. They didn't ever start the timer. I went like 30 minutes. I went through all of my 25 minutes of material,
even the stuff that didn't work that great. I was like, fuck, I gotta pull out more shit now.
Yeah, I mean, I did the 25 went really, really well, and I feel like that last 5 minutes I was stumbling, and then I started doing some crowd work, and it was bad. It was really, really bad, but it was okay because the person I was doing crowd work with afterwards was like, "You're so fucking hot. Like, here's my number," and I was like, "Okay." Well, I was like, "Cool." I didn't know that could happen. I didn't know you could bomb so hard at the end of your set and still get a number. Yeah, it was a wild time.
How do you feel about crowd work? How do you feel like comfort-wise with that?
I feel pretty good with it. It just depends on like
interacting with someone in the crowd, calling things out, really digging into it.
Oh, I have no problem with that. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've been really wanting to start gentle parenting hecklers. Like, those are some really big feelings.
So I watched Caroline Ray do that a couple weekends ago when I was there. Well, because there was this dude, and she even came back after her set was after the show was done. We were in the green room. I was like, yeah, there's this fucking guy out there. He was like, and the way she was describing him at first, I thought it was some older dude, like maybe like someone's Tio, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like older, maybe mid to late 50s, maybe 60s, who just didn't want to be there. No, it was some 35, 33-year-old dude that just didn't want to be there. And I guess he was sitting like this.
Oh.
The whole time during, and she has some dirty material, but it's like a strong PG-13.
Yeah.
she's very funny, very likable, very charismatic on stage. Like she's great.
Yeah.
But the whole time, I guess he was like, for the first 20-25 minutes, he was just like,
oof. Yeah, that's hard. That's the time where you have to call it out.
And it was the front row.
Yeah.
Just like, it's like, dog, loosen the fuck. Have a
At
Modelo
a certain point, like, go sit in the back. Like, if you're really gonna be like, it's just like, to me, it's like you purposely sat there to be angry because you just didn't like this person for like, and you don't even know the people on stage.
I think his chick dragged him there. That's what I think happened. And he just didn't want to fucking be there, and he's just pouting the whole time. That's what I think happened, if I had to guess.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. I would call out. I'd be like, why aren't you having a good time? Like, we can laugh. Like, what would make you laugh? Like, what's something you think is funny? And then I'd probably try to riff off of that. But my favorite time is when people just blurt random stuff. I had somebody, and I wish I would have gotten on camera. I was doing another longer set, and I like started doing some crowd work, and this person, I was like, what's the couple? My favorite question is, what's the worst thing that this other person does that annoys you the most? And I talked to this boyfriend about his girlfriend, and he goes, she farts on my head when she's not happy with me. What the fuck? It's like, are you okay? Like, it was just like, and it was something that was so funny that they had, like, it was so honest, and like just them blurting it out.
Yeah.
It was so
That's
great.
like the most Looney Tunes sexual abuse I've ever heard of.
Oh, yeah. I was like, what are you doing? Like, that's weird.
She just casually gives you pink eye.
Yeah, just randomly when she's mad at you. God damn. Nuh-uh.
That's funny. What the shit?
Yeah, so it just like depends. It's really if like the crowd is, I think the time not to do it is if the crowd is already not laughing. If the crowd's not laughing, don't go into crowd work because they already don't think you're funny. So you're going to go in and try to like work it out of them. And that, I feel like,
well, there's another situation that
I've
seen happen. I think a great example was I went to the local headliner show at Casaba's when they were doing that, where it was like, I think it was Jake and Kurt and then Zach and Karen.
Yeah.
And I went to the late show for Zach and Karen, and that crowd was rough. I'll be honest, like that was rough. And Zach, God bless him, he had to run the light a little bit because he just wanted. I mean, he was trying to end on a laugh, and his material that I've seen hit in every single room just wasn't working. And I watched him do crowd work to like, because it's like, and he got a laugh at the end of it. But I think that crowd, it's not that they didn't think he was funny. I think the majority of that crowd wanted to be spoken to and not be spoken at.
That's a good point, yeah.
You know what I mean? And they wanted to feel like they were a part of the show. So they wanted to have like the crowd work moment. Yeah. They wanted to have the comedian make fun of it or whatever it was. And I think that's like, I think that's just what's such a strong strength about like roast comics, like where you're so comfortable doing that anyway, you can call out the things that you actually see. Like, it's like, for me, I'm getting better at not being so disconnected from the crowd and getting like looking and seeing like things like reactions or like, I did a joke. What fucking joke? I think it was like my pedophile joke, my one liner that I have. And I think there's a dude in the front who took a bite of his French fries during the punchline. And I thought the motherfucker was going to choke. And I was like, dude, please don't choke on your French fries. Yeah. And it was like 100%. I wasn't even trying to be funny. It was just 100% serious. And then that got a laugh. It's like, oh, okay. So that's what that feels like. Yeah. All right. That makes a lot more sense. But yeah, learning how to break through that barrier and like calling out the things. Because I think one line that a lot of people that try crowd work a lot and they fuck up is, which I'm afraid of, because I know how I sound. I know how I come off. It comes off like, because of my background. It's military. It's very stern. I understand that about myself. So I don't ever want to pick on somebody and it sounds like I'm punching down. Yeah. It sounds like I'm being mean intentionally, and it sounds like I'm like, no, this is the comedy club. I'm trying to be funny. Yeah, I promise. Like, I'm not. Because I don't want to flat out say it, but in the back of my head, like, I'm not funny enough to be mean to you yet. I'm not funny enough for that yet.
That's fair. I try not to be like mean to crowd work. I try to like find the funny in what they are saying. My favorite way of interacting with the crowd is seeing their reactions to something, like especially that pornography joke. People will go, oh. Like they're about to cry themselves because they feel it, and I love finding the person in the front row that's dealing with that and be like, you know exactly what I mean, and then like, and that will like kind of break that barrier a little bit. But reactions. I love talking about people's reactions. Like sometimes they'll get "aww," and I'm like, you can wait till the allyship for the after the show, like, you know, and that'll kind of sometimes break that off. Like, you don't have to awe me. We can enjoy this.
See,
like,
and that's and I'm not throwing shade at now. I haven't seen anybody that really does this. Well, no, that's not true. There's one person that does this, and I don't like it very much. But in general, what I like about your comedy and what I like about the way you present your material and the way you present your premises and a lot of your life experience, which really you do, like, you talk about your experience as a transgender person, but you don't do it in a way where you're trying to virtue signal, where you're trying to, like, get clapped
Yeah.
and you're trying to, like, be fucking happy for me because I'm trans.
No,
like, that
oh my God,
shit
I'm not here to teach you.
Yeah, that
like,
shit is the weakest form of
I agree.
The weakest form of stand-up comedy is not making people laugh. But when you know you're not making people laugh, so therefore you say the virtuously correct thing to get claps. Fuck off, dude.
It feels a little self-centered in that
It's hacky.
way. Yeah, it's just like, oh, I'm not feeling good about what I'm doing, so let's clap so I feel better. Like,
Yes.
it's not going to make anyone feel better. No one's going to a comedy show specifically unless there's a specific type of comic that likes and they get all this extra information and they're more philosophical or maybe they're scientific about it, and that's fine. But most of the time, people don't want to fucking have to learn. They just want to have to laugh, right? They're there to, like, break that barrier. And one, you're going to change people's minds about things much more if you can make them laugh than making them clap for you. And I think that's just a huge thing. I think, like, I am a comedian, not a trans comedian. I'm a comedian that happens to be trans. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a big thing for me is, like, just being able to make people laugh will get a better reaction, and I will. And I also I feel like I reach people more that way. I reach people as a trans person who has these specific types of experiences much more. It's like, because, like, I feel like a lot of people who don't understand trans people or maybe are scared of it just have never actually talked to a trans person. I'm like, half the time I'm like, if you don't like this, go talk to a trans person. Go have an actual sit-down conversation with somebody, because most of the time you're going to realize that they're just as human as you are. And so if I can just go up there as a human being that happens to be trans instead of the trans comedian, that's so much better. It's better for my branding. It's better for how I want to do comedy. Like, I don't even care if people know. Like, it's not even something that people need to know. Sometimes if I'm in an older crowd, I'm going to let them know. I'm going to let them know, because people get scared. They hear those things and they go, oh, I don't want to get canceled. I don't want to get, like, ridiculed by my friends. I'm like, no, you can laugh at these things. We're here to have a fun time. I respect you. Now respect me and my time, and let's have a good time. And
Exactly.
That's it. And I think that breaks down a lot of barriers for people. But I mean, if you, like, telling people to boo at something or telling people to clap at something, you're just, I feel like at a point you're taking advantage of the crowd.
Not only that, so there's commanding an audience.
Yeah.
And you do that by making them laugh, first and foremost, right? But that's not commanding an audience. That is guilting an audience into a reaction that only you want.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't come here to listen to a TED Talk about how you think you're right about this specific thing that you're probably wrong about. Let's be honest. You're probably wrong about. And that's what I've noticed a lot, not just locally, but just when you see it I've seen it on Instagram, not as much lately, but I've seen it on, like, Instagram or TikTok, where it's like, yeah, the point you're making isn't even right, though. Yeah. It sounds virtually correct. It sounds like you're saying the right thing.
Yeah.
But either you think about it for longer than 30 seconds, or you just do a little bit of research, you find out you're actually wrong. So not only are you wrong about your point, you're now guilting this audience who, let's say, is be conservative and say half of them know you're wrong, but if they don't clap, then they're the asshole? Why are you making the crowd feel like an asshole if they don't do something?
Yeah, you're shutting off whatever interest you had in what you were saying. I feel like a lot of the time it's not where that is supposed to be. Like, yeah, if you're a headliner and that is your whole crowd, that's your whole vibe, and you can make 10,000 people show up to watch you, then do that on your own crowd. That's you.
I don't think you make it to a headliner status by doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I don't think that you are there to make people laugh. I think you're there to get a point across a lot of the time, and there is a time and space for that, and it's most likely in school.
It's not a comedy show.
It's not a comedy show. I think our goal is to take care of the crowd. You're not making people feel comfortable when you're talking down to them or their intelligence. Like, you should
Yeah.
treat the intelligence of a crowd the same as you would treat your friends, right? It's just that's how you get people's respect, is you respect them as the person that they are.
Exactly. And it's not to say, and I'm not advocating for the other side either, where it's like pander, because you shouldn't pander to a crowd. Like, I was I was watching I think it's called Killing is Easy. It's a documentary that they made. I think Comedy Central made it about Patrice O'Neal. Yeah, Killing is Easy. And there's a clip of him where he's talking. I think he's on the Opie and Anthony show, and he's talking about how he does stand up, and he's like, I don't want my whole crowd to like me. Like, and I like the way he said this, because it's like what I was thinking, but he articulated it the right way. And he's like, I don't want the whole crowd to like me. I want some of these people to disagree with me, because then I get to bring those people back.
Yeah.
And I noticed that even doing Casadas, because like I didn't realize, and on the face of it, it seems so obvious, but I didn't realize that Caroline Rhea and then just Sabrina the Teenage Witch was like a gay, like a
it's a gay staple.
Yeah,
sure.
thank you, staple.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. It's a staple of the gay community. But she had 2 aunts, right? That makes sense. I just didn't it didn't click for me, right? But then when I went out into the audience, even like my chick was out there, she was like, "Yeah, there's a lot of gay couples here." And I guess she didn't expect that either.
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's a bad thing." It was like, I just didn't expect that. But then you think about, oh right, 2 aunts, that makes sense. And so like as I'm going through my set, like there are jokes that some people laughed at and other people just fucking hated it. But then the people that hated the last one loved that, and the other people hated this one, and it flip flops. Like, that's kind of what you want, in my opinion. Because you're not bending your will to the crowd to try to you want to make everybody laugh, of course. But if the material is still majorly funny, it's okay if some people don't like it for it. Because then at least they might think about it. And obviously, I think you made a good point where you make more people reconsider their points or think about different things by making them laugh and making them clap. But that speaks to your integrity as a comic. That speaks to the strength of your material. And then just like, I don't believe in what I'm saying like a practical way. Because I mean, if you took my set and wrote it down as a piece of paper and said, that's what I believe, I'd get thrown in prison. But because I just say some fucking horrible thing.
That's fair, yeah.
But it's still funny. And it's still delivered in a way that's to make people laugh. And then the people that don't like it, well, maybe you don't like it because maybe what I said really was fucked up. Or maybe you need to loosen up a little bit. But it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to, because you just laughed at the next thing. You laughed at the thing before it. It is what it is. But I think the way you worded it was perfect. I'm not a transgender comedian. I'm a comedian that happens to be trans. That is the right fucking bite. And
that's just how I live my life. And that's how I've lived my life as a musician. That's how I live my life as a student. That's how I live my life as a worker. Like, it's just, I am at most foremost a human being, transgender second. And that's just how I think that's how everyone should be looking at all of these things. Like, it is a big part of me, but it's not all that I am. Why would I want that? Like, why would I want my whole identity to be just around my gender identity? That limits me as a human being. That limits other people as human beings, and I don't fuck with that shit.
No, it does. And I think that, and again, like, I hate to reduce it to this because I'm not trying to, but it's like your branding.
Yeah.
Do you want your branding to be a specific group of people, or do you want it to be comedy enjoyers?
I want to make people laugh. I'm not here just to make queer people laugh. Do I love and enjoy making queer people laugh? Yes, because we need to be laughing a little bit more. I totally feel that. But no, I'm here to make you laugh. I'm not here to make you like appreciate trans people more. If you end up doing that after my set, that's cool. I'm glad that I got to. I mean, your hatred for whatever, your distaste for that wasn't even that big in the first place. If that's what changed your mind in the first place. But,
no, yeah.
It's.
Well, I had conversations with people about the Tony Hinchcliffe incident, where like people got mad about the Puerto Rico joke. Where I was like, we should talk about it. Where it's like, I promise you that if there are people that were going to vote for Trump, but the roast comic made them sad about Puerto Rico, I promise you they weren't going to vote for Trump in the first place.
Probably not.
I promise you they weren't going to. That
didn't sway anything. I think if anything, like... Can I actually have one of those?
Oh, yeah.
That'd be great.
Go right ahead.
I thank you so much, friend. Oh.
Yeah, go right ahead.
But I think that's a big part of it. I mean, with the Tony Hinchcliffe stuff, I think it was such a fucking dumb venue to do that. Just this dumb place and time to do that. I mean, if anyone has a good point about it, it's Joe Rogan, which has been very vocal about his disdain for how it happened. It's just, it's not jokes if the political party had to run through your jokes and okay them. Right, like
Yeah.
it's not a comedy set. You're going up there to be a speaker, and so like those are the things you can be funny, and that's something that politicians can do really, really well at, and really do very wrong is being funny as well. Right, like not that I appreciate this man, but Richard Nixon, right? He has that moment in the debate where he's like, I'll never use my opponent's lack of experience against them because they were like talking about hope. And that's a funny thing to say. That's genuinely funny. I think, those are the moments that you can be a politician and be funny, but I think they're two different things. Again, it's not in a comedy club. You were at a political rally. That's a political speech. It wasn't necessarily a set.
Well, and typically I would agree with you, but I think that's what's so weird about Trump's campaign, because and that's why I tried telling people, because I heard some people talk about, even like when I did Bugs podcast, it came up, but I've heard a lot of people say like, well, the Trump campaign didn't know what he was going to say. I'm like, no, he had teleprompters in front of him. He had teleprompters. You can see the teleprompters in front of him.
Yeah.
He knew what he was going to say.
And they all knew what he was going to say.
But they just didn't give a fuck. I guarantee you they didn't give a shit about it. And that's one of the things I didn't like about Trump's response to it is when Trump said, he did the interview with Sean Hannity and it came up. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but so he does an interview with Sean Hannity and Hannity asked him about it and he goes, I have no idea who that guy is. I don't like him. He's not affiliated with the party or whatever. He's not affiliated with the campaign. And I was like, dude, you're lying. You are lying through your teeth. Let's say he's not lying, because I think that was a bold-faced lie. But even if he was telling the truth, then you're telling me, just outside looking in, that you can't control who's going up at your, not just a rally, but who's going up at your sold-out Madison Square Garden rally? Oh, dude, that is not going to help you with like your image of running a country. Now, granted, it didn't
wish-washy, for sure.
It didn't damage him, obviously, because people saw everything for what it was, so it kind of was like null and void. Because then because Biden had to turn around and call the Trump supporters garbage. And I think that's what that's what carried Trump's campaign, was like, he knew, even before he knew his audience, he's a performer. He knows how to be, not going to say performer, an entertainer.
Yeah.
He knows, like that line against Hillary Clinton where he goes, where you would be in jail. Or the line against Megyn Kelly where he was like, only Rosie O'Donnell. Like, it's those kind of things that carried him along, that was like, okay, he could be like him sitting down with Andrew Schultz doing the Flagrant podcast. Just seeing him talk shit and be funny. That type of charisma is what carried him through. But I agree with the point that, 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning at a political rally, they shouldn't have hired. Don't get mad at Tony Hinchcliffe. He is a guy, like you're saying earlier, it's a job.
Yeah.
He has a career. In the way he has built his career is being a roast comedian. Yeah, that is what he's good at. So don't hire the juggler and then tell him not to juggle.
Yeah, it's
you know what I mean?
It's frustrating.
Don't hire the plumber to do your electrical work. You hire a roast comedian, he's gonna roast everybody. He went after, honestly, quite frankly, I thought his Israel-Palestine joke was a lot more I laughed at it, but I thought his Israel-Palestine joke was a lot more offensive than his Puerto Rico joke.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just like...
Have you seen the full set?
I've seen the full set, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it just, to me, I don't think it was his best material that he could have done. I don't think, I've seen things where there were other people claiming that he was stealing the Puerto Rico joke, that he's had people on Kill Tony say it before.
Oh, wow.
About an island being a floating island of garbage or whatever. And so people were like, no, that was a stolen joke already. And so it was just like, those were things that I was looking at. I just think that he should have just gone up and said what he felt about the election and then walked off. And I think that probably would have not hurt him.
No one would have given a shit.
No one would have given a shit. It would have just been like a comedian saying some things about how he feels politically, and it would have been tied outside of comedy instead of being tied with it.
Because I don't think comedians should be endorsing political figures in general, because the comedian is supposed to be making fun of everybody.
Yeah, we're holding up a mirror to society.
Exactly. And it's okay for a comedian to have open views about political issues, but outright endorsing a candidate, it's wishy-washy there. Not wishy-washy, but it's iffy there. And the only reason I give not a pass, the only reason Joe Rogan has earned that is because he's not just a comedian.
No, yeah. I mean, I feel like he's even more of an interviewer and a podcaster before he is a comedian. Yeah. He's still a podcaster and an interviewer that does comedy.
Right.
But I think, like, by far, his interview stuff is way better than his comedy stuff, in my opinion. You know, and
a lot of people see, I'm the outlier. I'm the outlier in that, where I'm like, yeah, I like a lot of Joe Rogan's material, and I know a lot of people don't. Like, I know after his last special came out, the Burn the Boats, that got trashed online. Everyone,
even some of his biggest fans were like, please stop doing this.
Yeah, like, everyone just took a shit on him. And what I will say, because I've seen that special I think 3 times now, because I wanted to find out like why people were so angry about it. And I will say, because I've been listening to his stuff for a while, there are bits in there that he has done before. There's material in there that was on I think his best is still Rocky Mountain High from like 10, 12 years ago. But there's material in that set that, and now granted the material is better in that, not better, but it's just like a different angle, a different way to look at it. But it's still premises he did 12 years ago. And it's like, fuck, man, like that's disappointing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to lie, that is disappointing to see like reused jokes in a brand new set. So there's credence to that. I completely agree. But yeah, he is more popular now for his podcast, rightfully so, than his stand-up. So, I mean, I'm cool with him giving a political endorsement. But
yeah, he talks about it all the time. He has political people. He's had Bernie Sanders on. He's had a bunch of different people. I mean, like, I think it's different in that way. I think he should have just gone on stage, said the things that he thought about and his personal opinions about the election and like what things are, and just not done that, because he would have gotten more people to go to his comedy. I think he would have had a better chance, because inside of a comedy club, that probably would have done better.
Oh,
and it would have been more towing that line instead of being on the other side of that line, right? Where I feel like that's where he messed up. And I know he knows that. I mean, his friends give him plenty enough shit for that.
Well, and then, like, I don't know. I just... it was interesting watching his set, which is weird calling it a set at a political rally. But watching his speech, his set, what do you want to call it? And he wouldn't say that he's voting for Donald Trump. He was the closest thing he said to it was, I sleep good at night knowing who I'm voting for. And then he said, we're going to make America funny again. We're going to make it like less censored again. And then he didn't say make America great again, but he said something about like, this country's going to be great again, or like something. He like skirted around it. But you know, it's like I get it. But then also on the other hand, I'm going to be completely honest. If I was Tony Hinchcliffe and the Trump campaign came to me and was like, hey, man, because I'll bet what happened is Rogan made a suggestion, like you should have Tony speak. He's comfortable being at Madison Square Garden. He's done the Garden 3 times, whatever. I'm sure the Trump campaign went to Tony and was like, hey, man, we'd like you to speak. We'd like you to do jokes. And we're going to pay you north of $500,000. I'll bet you he got paid about $700,000 for that. Because the numbers finally came out about how much Trump spent on the campaign, and he only spent like, I think it was like 8. Oh fuck, I'm gonna get this wrong, but let me find it real quick. He didn't spend a comparative to Kamala Harris. He didn't spend a ton of money on the staffing. And I'm trying to pull it up. Let's see, beauty podcast, election spending, because he didn't spend all that much on the actual. Here we go. So Trump spent $10 million on his staff. So I doubt Tony got $1 million. I doubt. I'll bet he got like $600,000 to $700,000, which is still a pretty solid chunk of change.
I mean, it's life changing for some people. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So then, like, I put myself in his shoes. That's tough to say no to.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I don't think I would. I mean, if like, let's even perfect scenario, you know, Bernie Sanders came up to me and was like, June, I need you to do, I'd be like, no, I'm sorry. Like, I'll be there to like, in the crowd.
You would say no to that?
I would say no to that, because I don't think it would be, it's not where my comedy is supposed to be. My comedy's not that. My comedy's like, I would go and speak and be like, as a trans person, I could go up on there and be like, hey, let's talk about some issues and like how we're supposed to treat people. But that would be what I would do. I wouldn't go up there
and do your deep throating joke.
Yeah, right. Like, hey, everybody that's political people, before I get bottom surgery, I'm going to cast my dick in silicone so I know what it feels like to disappoint myself. It's just...
I think that would kill at a liberal rally.
It probably would do fine. It would probably... that joke kills. That joke kills no matter what. But I think it would just be the dumbest thing for me to do, and I would get shit on so quickly by people. They'd be like, this is so dumb.
But then you get to turn around and call them transphobes. That's your shield.
But I wouldn't.
It's okay.
I don't give a shit. I'm like, if you hate me, go ahead, dude. I'm gonna like, it's not. You could wake up tomorrow and be like, I'm gonna go kill June Opal, and it wouldn't change my life. It would, if anything, relieve some pain. You know, like, I'm tired of being on this planet. This is shitty. Like, am I gonna be able to afford a house? Who knows? Like, you know, like.
It was funny. I was having a conversation with my buddy last night. We were just catching up. Briefly, and he asked me how stand-up's going. I was like, yeah, it's going good. I mean, I'm not gonna, I'm not expecting to make it a real career until like 10 or so years from now. Where he goes, yeah, but that's how you know you've made it when you can buy private healthcare off stand-up. Like that's when you know you made it. And I was like, yeah, well, that'll be a lot more attainable than a house. And he goes, well, no, you can buy a house eventually. I'm like, no, it is a lot more likely that stand-up will buy me affordable. It will buy me private healthcare before it buys me a house.
I'll get cheek implants before I can buy a fucking house. Are you kidding me? Like, no.
I think we have very different definitions of healthcare.
Yeah, no. Not that they're even covered. This is the first set of cosmetic surgery that I thought of.
Did you read? It was very interesting to me. That's why I opened that pod that I did about Trump. Did you read Bernie Sanders' response to the election?
Oh yeah, I think
he hit the nail on the. I don't agree with Bernie Sanders on a whole lot. Now, granted, after the amount of money, because I was very much in the camp of, like, when it came to universal healthcare, like, I know it should be a thing.
It should be.
Like,
every other country on this planet has it.
It should definitely be a thing.
And it would save us money.
And just because I'm like a financial dude, I just don't know how that works out. Because I was still in the camp of like, this is a very conservative view. I was still in the camp of like, well, I don't know if we have the money to pay for that and sustain it and like do all this. Like we might be able to get it going for like a year or so, but like, that's a lot of tough things to do, especially with the health epidemic that we have with like the severe obesity and like the chronic condition issues that we have in this country and stuff like that. But then I see all the money that we're funneling into Ukraine, that
Ukraine and fucking Israel. Yeah, you kidding me? We couldn't pay for that?
Yeah,
like
that may or may not be money laundering by the Biden family. Anyway, when I see all those numbers of money that were going over there, especially because it's like, so I looked at, I don't know what the reasons, I know a recent statistic came out in the middle of October, but as of like March or May of this year, we looked it up on the podcast a few weeks ago. We had spent $174 billion on Ukraine alone. And of that 174, something like 120, 130 of it went to their government. Like it went to government. It didn't go to like actual like weapons of war. It didn't go to anything like that. It went to just.
They're not even allowed to use most of our weapons in war.
It went to like propping. Wait, say it again?
Or there's certain things that they're not allowed to use because of the like agreement, right? Like they've already been saying.
Nah. Okay. Well, okay, no, no.
Because there's
I know what you're talking about.
Land missiles we're just now giving them the permission to start using stuff like that because of the threats that Putin has made to Ukraine and the rest of NATO.
Okay, I see what you're so that's what I was trying to say. You're partially right. So what it wasn't Hellfire missiles, it was because those would be like way outlandish. It was air defense systems that they weren't, because they were asking for air. I think it was surface to air missiles they were asking for, and we weren't giving it to them. I think it was that. It wasn't like you can't use it. It's just we're just not going to give it to you.
Yeah, that's
because we don't think it warrants it. But my point is like, okay, so we have all this money funneling into there. I think we could have solved universal health care. I think it was in the budget. And
it is.
And I think a lot of Americans, well, I don't know if it is now. That's for sure. But at least I think a lot of Americans, let's say 5-6 years ago, no one's cool with a crashing economy. That's for sure. Yeah. But I think Americans would feel not better about it, but they might be able to go, okay, I see where it's going. If the healthcare system improved, if the homeless issue got better, if the infrastructure got better, if our airports got better. Like, I think it's something that's not really talked about right now in the Trump campaign, which it definitely should be. But like what I liked about Trump when he was running in 2015 was that he was calling out a lot of ugly things about our country that people knew, but we didn't recognize were problems. And I think in one of those things with the airports, he was like, yeah, it's one of the most viral things that came out of that initial campaign, where he was like, you fly out of somewhere like Dubai, or you fly out of somewhere like Tokyo, and they have beautiful airports, and you come to like JFK, and it's like you flew into a third world country in comparison. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, hey, that makes a little bit more sense. So then now you flash forward like 8 years later, again, nobody likes a crippled economy, but people might be, okay, well, I see where it's going. If it's like, yeah, our economy's kind of down the toilet, but like healthcare is kind of working now, or like our roads are a lot better. Like, that's the thing that bugs me. Like, our roads in New Mexico are fucking terrible.
No, every state around here, around New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Texas, all have garbage infrastructure.
Well, I think the roads in Colorado are a lot better. And that's what I noticed. Like, me and my chick, we went on a road trip to Colorado. It's like when we first started dating, like years and years ago. I remember we had driven up to Colorado. I think we spent like a night there, or a night or two up there. And driving from, because I'd never been to Colorado before. We went to Denver. And driving from here into Colorado, it was like a noticeable difference in the way I was driving. It's like, across the state lines, like, oh, that's what a road should feel like? Oh, okay, I do agree. That makes a lot more, you know what I mean? So like, if you're noticing things, not just locally, but just on a national level, things are getting better. It's like, okay, I'm cool with the government spending right now. I'm cool because the quality of life around me is getting better. But when it's just going off into a country that most people can't point out on a map, where most people aren't like seeing the effects of that, and quite frankly, at least in my opinion, there are a lot more geopolitical effects that are negative than there are positive about funding this war.
Both wars, both Israel and fucking Ukraine. It's insane how much money we're giving them.
And I think that's what lost the Democratic Party the election.
Oh yeah,
I think it was like a year ago. It was something like 78% of the constituency of the Democratic Party was not pro-war. And now, not only did that party go pro-war, in the last 90 days of their presidential campaign, 60 days of the presidential campaign, you start touting out Liz and Dick Cheney. Go fuck yourself.
There was a lot of...
Are you kidding me?
They fucked up, and there was so much complaining... There's a couple of reasons why they lost. Yeah, they lost because they continued to fund a genocide. We're killing innocent children right now.
Did you hear about
putting money into? Yeah, no, they're chopping children's heads.
Did you hear about the X-ray scandal that happened? Like, no. I think a year ago. I think it was a year ago. No, it wasn't a year, because it wasn't that soon after October 7th. It was this year. Just kidding. Oh man, maybe it was the summer of this year. I don't know. Anyway, Dave Smith brought it up on Rogan's last podcast they did together, and I looked it up, and it's real. So I guess what happened was there was I want to say it was a journalist who had gone out to Gaza and was reporting on things that were going on there, and there were like these subdued reports of the IDF. And for you listening, I believe it's the Israeli Defense Federation or something like that. It's Israel's military.
Yeah.
There were subdued reports that they were killing babies. They just shooting them in the head, killing babies. And it was getting, that's not true. That's Hamas propaganda. Whatever. And there's a lot of propaganda on both sides going around. So kind of got chalked up to that. But this journalist went and was like, oh, you guys think it's propaganda? Got the x-rays of the dead babies and gave it to the New York Times, and they published it.
No. Yeah, we're literally being complicit in a genocide right now. Our government is. Maybe not us as a people.
No, the government is.
But the government right now is, and they're continuing to do that. And that's one of the reasons she lost. She lost because, like I said at the beginning, they don't even want to lie to us that they give a shit about us anymore. If we're poor, they don't give a shit about you.
Did you see when they brought out these economics experts, not to cut you off, but they brought these economic experts where they were trying to explain how the economy is actually good, and they were saying that oh man, I have to show you this fucking video. It's genuinely mind blowing what these people came up with. And basically, it's gaslighting in real time. I have it saved on my Instagram because I couldn't believe how fucking horrible this is.
It's just crazy to like literally lump an entire group of people into an organization like Hamas when it's just literally such a small percentage of what is happening in that group of people. It's so frustrating.
Okay, so these are some economic experts that the Biden-Harris administration, let's put it that way, brought in, and this is during the White House press secretary briefing, right? Okay.
Easy one to answer. It has a lot to do with what's...
And so they asked about why is it that voters at the voting polls, even though you're saying the economy is getting better, why don't they feel it?
Inflation.
Yeah, it's a really important question. It's not an easy one to answer. It has a lot to do with we at CEA have made up something that turns out to be a real thing. We call it your personal price vector. This idea that everybody walks around with a list of prices in their head. What's on that list? Gasoline, groceries, sure. But if, like my wife, you're somebody who likes to garden, fertilizer is on that list. And you remember what things cost. You remember that you used to pay $3 for this and now you're paying $4 for this. Now, one of the points that I'm making is that as your pay goes up, that $4 becomes something you can afford again. So here's a calculation that we do that no normal person would do, which is that it says, if you look at how much work, how many hours of work does it take to buy a bag of groceries right now, it's about the same or even a little lower than it was before the pandemic, right? Because, yes, grocery prices have gone up, but especially recently, wages have gone up more than grocery prices.
Yeah.
So for whatever hours of work it took you to buy a bag of groceries before the pandemic, it's about the same, even a little less right now. So why don't people feel better? Because they still remember what things used to cost. They still have that their PPVs or personal price vectors have yet to update completely.
So it's you, June Opal. It's you.
Yeah.
You are the reason that you are not buying as many groceries. No, you are buying as many groceries.
Capitalism. I'm so frustrated. Yeah,
That's gaslighting.
it is. No, it's shitty.
I hate that term because it's so just like
Yeah.
a lot of other terms and a lot of other phrases, they've lost meaning. But that's gaslighting.
No, it's bullshit. No, they're literally the Biden administration sucked so much, and the majority of people that you would consider not like neoliberal, but maybe left, like far left leaning, didn't like that man. Didn't want to vote for that man. Didn't want to do those things, and most of those people in this election did not vote because she walked on stage and said, "We're going to do the same thing."
It even worse, she had Megan Thee Stallion go up and perform and twerk and talk about or sing about or rap about all the money she's getting in front of people that are believing that Harris will fix the issue.
No, no one's going to fix the issue. I think this is a thing that is abundantly clear in the last 8 years, is that whether you're Democrat, Republican, far right, far left, those people in power are not going to fix this issue. The only thing that they could do, and they're not going to, is feather in some fucking capitalism and really put some fucking regulations on these mass corporations that continue to rise. Walmart's prices should not be going up with the amount of money that the government is giving them to pay their workers. It's ridiculous. I think no matter what side you are on, they're not here to help you. The only thing we can do now, and the only reason I was okay with voting for Kamala is because I felt I would have 4 more years. We would all, as a collective community, have 4 more years to actually get together, band together as civilians, as a community, and change shit.
But you just said they left you behind.
They did. No, but they left me behind in 2020 and in 2016. As soon as, really, if you want to go back to why the Democratic Party is just falling fucking apart, is because, one, they have not had a plan in fucking almost 12 years. They do not give a shit about us, and they didn't. Hillary Clinton basically made sure that Bernie Sanders couldn't be the nomination, and he would have won. We would have now just be
ending
the Bernie Sanders. We would have had 8 years of him. There would have been no way, because I think he was no matter who you were, he was what's the word I'm looking for? charismatic enough to give a fuck about. He cared. He had more single. I think the majority of his donations were no longer. I think what it was. I could be wrong. About $14-15.
Oh yeah, he did have the most amount of like single donation or whatever.
Independent donations. He didn't take any money from super PACs, which is a huge thing. I think we should all be giving a fuck. If you think a billionaire is going to give a fuck about you or change anything in your life, you're wrong, because they don't. They wouldn't be billionaires. Because it doesn't. To be a billionaire is to take advantage of people.
What, you mean Nancy Pelosi?
Oh yeah, they're all garbage. They're literally the politicians in this country are all garbage. They can make small impacts in their communities and their constituents, and there's communities that they're getting elected from. Yes, they can change things there, but they're never going to be able to change things on a grand scale. I
disagree with that.
I don't think we're going to see it. I don't think we're going to see prices go down. I don't think we're going to see like much change. I like the amount, even like I looked up, even just let's just even go back to Israel and Gaza and how much money we've consistently given to Israel and Gaza. Both the Biden administration and the Trump administration gave about the same amount of money.
Yeah, so that's not going to change. I agree with that.
So as soon as we're giving billions of dollars, we're not putting that into making prices cheaper, which we could do. We could make groceries. We could literally put laws into place to make groceries cheaper. We could make it.
So that you can't do that. Here's the reason why. Because when you start, because that was one of Kamala Harris's points, right? One of her points was that we are going to put in, laws, right? We're going to propose bills and make laws. And she would probably try to do it. She would have tried to do it with executive order, but they would have gotten overturned. Whereas you can't price gouge. Like that was one of her things, right? It was like, okay, but then when that actually goes to a legislative session, or even because that would probably go to the Supreme Court, right? It was like, okay, well, how do you define price gouging? And if I'm looking at that from the corporation's perspective, it's like, okay, well, the market is really only based upon, obviously, it's the amount of money that it costs to produce and transport these goods. That's where you start. But then also it's like, okay, well, what are people willing to pay for it, right? That's why you have a lot, like a really easy example is like if you go and you look at a place like Walmart, or you look at a place like Costco's a great example. So Costco, they were selling these like the Gatorade, these giant Gatorade waters, like these electrolyte waters for Gatorade for $20 a pack. Nobody was fucking buying them, so they lowered it to $8. People started buying them again because they're just not going to have them anymore, right? It wasn't selling at that price point. Yeah. It's what people are willing to pay. Now, it was originally $20 and some people bought it, but in majority, not a lot of people did, so they lowered it down to $8. That's the market regulating itself. But when you look at something like price gouging, it's like, okay, well, can you really legislate, or can you make a good argument in a legislative environment or a judicial environment that this price was actually gouged? Or can you, because that leaves, I think you leave way too much gray area for the corporation to come in and say, well, we had to spend this much money to do this. We had to spend this much money on transport, this much money on production. We had blah, 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 right? To basically say, to justify why they're price gouging. I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying that it's a good thing. But then also, if you tried to put in legislation for price gouging, then you're doing anti-capitalism bills, which won't fly in this country, A, but B, that opens up the rabbit hole to where it's like, okay, well, if you are now allowed to say that Sony, for instance, Sony can't price their PlayStation 5 at $500, they have to price it at $300. Well, now are you allowed to put that on anybody else? Now does the government control the market? Because now once the government controls the market, that's when you start, because then a lot of it started getting like conspiratorial, like, oh, the Democratic Party is trying to bring in the uniparty. There's a decent argument for that. However, part of a staple of a uniparty is controlling a market. And that's how you get into socialism. That's when you start saying the government is allowed to say what things are priced at, what things can be sold for, what things can be bought for, and that's not good.
And to a certain extent, I think when we're there, maybe groceries isn't the best option to do that. But let's say the rent increases that we're seeing all over the country, right, and like how it's becoming almost unsustainable, as we talked about before, to buy a house. Yeah. How do we change that without government intervention at that point, right? Well, you have to get Blackwall or BlackRock or whatever, the investment company or whatever, the hedge fund, to stop fucking buying everything and renting them out and raising the prices to they think that it's okay, right? So there's a certain there needs to be regulation in certain areas of that. So
that's the anti-monopoly. I can't speak. Anti-monopoly laws, and that does need to get. I agree. So that's because then
those barely work anyway. We have monopolies right now.
Well, so that was a big
Disney
issue.
would be a great example of a monopoly.
I was just about to say that. So that was the issue with Disney. So when Disney bought out 20th Century Fox, they tried buying Fox Sports as well. But when that went to the Supreme Court, they said you can't buy Fox Sports because the amount of properties you have under your umbrella, that would make you now a monopoly on this entertainment environment, and you can't buy that. You can buy 20th Century Fox and their movie properties, but you can't buy Fox Sports, even though they have the capital for it, and even though Fox was almost about to sell them Fox Sports, you can't do that. So that's why a lot of sporting events now under Fox are under so many different umbrellas. Like you can watch it on Hulu, I believe, starting with I think on Christmas Day. Those football games are going to be on Netflix now too, so it gets spread out. So Fox is still getting their money. My point is that's why you have those monopoly laws. Why that doesn't apply to the housing market with BlackRock and all the other hedge funds, I'm not too sure. And maybe that's something that should start applying to them, because I completely agree. I mean, dude, fucking what was it? It was in 2021. Yeah, 2021. I was looking to buy a house because I had the VA loan, which was like the zero. What's nice about the VA loan,
my dad bought his most recent house.
It's the very low interest rate compared to the market, and then it was the interest rate back then was like 2.3, and then it was zero money down to get in. So then I remember looking at this condo. I was like, I was a little bit like, it's right at my budget, but I could get it, whatever. I ended up not going for it. Flash forward to last year, I'm looking around for a new place for me and my buddy to live at. And I end up looking at this condo, and I'm like, okay, I get the address. And I'm driving them like, I've been here before. I put the key in, and I'm like, oh, this was the place that I was. Oh, is it almost time?
It's 8, now.
I
got about 2 more minutes.
Okay.
We can finish up.
Okay, yeah, so I was like, yeah, fuck, this was the place I was going to buy. I do some looking into the rental company that ended up buying it. Who are their parent companies? You follow the rabbit hole, and it's fucking BlackRock. Yeah. And I was like, that's why I couldn't buy a house. That's why, because I remember talking to my realtor, and I was just like, hey, like, who ended up buying it? And she goes, we aren't allowed to see who bought it, but we are allowed to see the price point. And I got outpriced by $10,000. And I was like, oh, fuck.
It's ridiculous.
It's a trip, dude.
It's an absolute trip. Can I say some stuff?
Yeah.
This is just as a trans person, in my perspective, I think if there's any time, let's not give a fuck about who's Republican or Democrat. Let's give a fuck about this community. If you don't know a trans person, go meet a trans person. If you don't know a Republican, go meet a fucking Republican. Start having these conversations that are based on just being human. And I encourage anybody that's listening to this to go talk to some people. Like, if there's any time and we want change to happen, we can't rely on these people anymore. We got to rely on each other. And the only way that we do that is by reaching across the aisle, or whatever statement you want to put that under, and just fucking have a conversation. You know, if you want to have a conversation with me, hit me up. I'll have a conversation with you, and we can have a discussion. You know that I've been on this podcast before when we've had very serious discussions about these things. So please do. I think if you're listening to this and you're like, you're not sure about things, or you don't know, stop looking at the fucking internet and go have a conversation with the fucking person, because it's going to give you more perspective, and you're going to realize that your neighbors don't actually fucking hate you, and that we're all actually struggling with the same thing, y'all. We're all dealing with this, and I think the only way to change it is to do that, and also make sure that every fucking senator and congressperson makes the median income of the household that their state that they're representing.
That's what I've wanted for a long time.
No, I really think, and I'll end this with this, that's the only way we're going to change anything in our current system. Without a complete overhaul of our current system, the only way to change it is to make them live like us.
I agree. June Opal, you're the shit.
I appreciate you, man. You as well.
This is going to come out in like 3 weeks or so.
Cool.
So, do you have any shows coming up like mid-December?
Mid-December, no. I'm not booked right now. Now we're just focusing on writing and hopefully getting booked at the clubs.
Sweet.
Yeah.
You're awesome, man. Where
Appreciate
can people find you on social media?
Yeah, June Opal Comedy on Instagram, on Threads. I'm not on Twitter because I couldn't log back in from my old account, which is fucking dumb. But yeah, Instagram and Threads, and then Facebook if you want to, but I probably will not add you as a friend.
All right, man. You're the shit.
I appreciate you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.